Where did that come from? Oh my God, that's an antique picture.
I thought we were muted, but we aren't muted from each other.
No, you're not muted at all, but that's fine. We're going to start in a few seconds anyway.
I love it. It's a friendly group.
Exactly. Welcome everyone to the museum's second Winter Web Series webinar. I'm really excited to be here tonight to present Cheryl Brinker, who's moderating the panel, Mary Colby, Marguerite Chadwick-Juner, and Ron Terner. I've grown up really admiring all their work, especially Marguerite, who I grew up on the same block as, and have been lucky to have my face painted by her a few times. So I'm very excited for the conversation tonight. Some housekeeping details, as I mentioned at the start. You guys are going to have an opportunity to ask questions throughout the presentation. Just put them either in the Q&A box or on the chat function on the side, and I'll compile them. And then towards the end, we're going to have, we'll either ask you to turn on your mics or to, I'll just read out the questions to them. We've turned off the video feature for this event, so you're just going to see the artists, and then you're also going to see their artwork side by side next to them. So make sure that you have side-by-side mode set onto your computer. That should be on the right-hand side. And if you click down, there's like gallery view, speaker view, side-by-side view. So hopefully that works out so that you're able to see both the artists and their artwork side-by-side. And then finally, just make sure that you're following us on social media so you could sign up for future events and hear more about what we're doing. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to ask the artists to come on screen.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, let's see if we got this.
Would you like to wait, Lauren?
Okay, the floor is yours, Cheryl. Yes, I'm trying to just confirm that the screen is working. Can someone from the audience confirm that you could see the panelists and the artwork next to it? My view is different than everyone else's. It worked when I was doing the testing.
Do we have an audience?
2 participants raised their hand. Who's raising their hand? Stephanie. Stephanie, what do you got?
Hello, can you hear me?
I could hear you, yeah.
Yeah. I see Marguerite and Ron, Cheryl and Mary.
And then you also see their artwork?
I see something on the left. I don't know who the artist is, but it's somebody leaning over a pond of water.
Yep, it's Marguerite. Okay, we're good to go, I think.
Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay, we're glad you could join us tonight. And as you know, we have Mary Colby, Marguerite Chadwick-Juner, and Ron Terner, spelled with an E. We want to make sure that's clear. And we started out to have an entirely different presentation on one of the artists that we're going to show in the spring, Mark Whitcomb, because the museum has 31 major etchings and paintings of his. And as it progressed, we thought we'd rather start with the living. And so, and they aren't old enough to have the notoriety that Mark has had. So let's start with you, Mary. Do you want to tell us a little bit?
Okay, but Marguerite's paintings are up.
Oh, excuse me. I can't really tell that. Let's start with Mark.
Okay, here you go. Okay, me.
Mark, want to begin and tell us a little bit about how and why you became an artist?
Okay, you're talking to me now, right, Cheryl?
No, I'm
No,
talking.
no, now my work is on the screen.
Yes.
Mary, let's talk.
Okay, so how I became an artist really started with my parents. My mother was a painter, and my father was a civil engineer, but he was a photographer too. And they lived on Pelham Parkway in a small apartment, and the kitchen was a laboratory, a makeshift art studio, and a dark room. So my father would take me on Sundays to the New York Botanical Gardens in the morning, and he would teach me about photography, how to see through the lens of a camera and compose through the lens of a camera. And then we'd go home, and there would be a Goya on the easel, like half-baked, or a Caravaggio or Rembrandt, because that's the way my mother learned to paint, by copying the old masters. So it really was, it was a wildly creative atmosphere. And then on Sunday afternoons, we'd go to my grandmother. And after dinner there was a big grand piano. And my uncle was a musician, so there was singing. And so it was all the arts together. And thinking back and reflecting on it these last couple of days, I'm really very fortunate to have had that. After college, I went to the Art Students League for 4 years, and I was very fortunate to have some very good teachers. I studied with David Leffel, who was a traditionalist. He taught Rembrandt lighting, and he's still teaching actually in Santa Fe under Bright Light Studios. If anybody's interested, he's just a marvelous demonstrator. And then I studied with Robert Phillip, who was an American Impressionist, Robert Beverly Hale, which was just an incredible anatomist. He would draw with this long stick with like twice life size of the anatomy just out of his head. And finally, I wound up in Richard Pouzette Dart's class, and that was my first foray into abstract expressionism and modern art, modern thinking. And he told me maybe the best advice I ever got was to dance in the dark, which is to trust oneself and to just trust oneself enough to let go and find your own voice. So that basically was my experience, you know, in opening myself up to be an artist. But really, I wanted to be a musician until I met my husband, Mitch, and he was such a good musician that I retired my guitar.
What brought you to City Island?
That was my bicycle. And yeah, I think it was 1969 or it was 1970. And I rode my bicycle to City Island. I lived right on Pelham Parkway, very near Pelham Bay Park. And I rode past Creative Mud Pottery, which was Warren Sonberg's pottery shop. And it was such a beautiful thing. And I walked in and I asked him for a job, and he was so nice. He let me assist for 2 summers, I believe. And he had this great kiln in the backyard, and he had a raku pit. And at the time it was a renaissance on City Island of so many artists. There was a leather shop, and Mark Whitcomb was doing his etchings. I don't know if you were there yet, Ron, but I know Marguerite was painting, and there was so many things. So Richie DePiero had the Black Whale, and it was just an inspiring, wonderful environment. So I was very, very lucky to come to City Island in that way. I had a lot of fun.
Tell us a little bit about how.
And then in 1993, I came back. I had started my decorative painting business, V50, and I went to the real estate, and they showed me that space, which I had weirdly dreamt about. and I recognized it, and I took the shot. So, and then I met Marguerite a couple of years later at Chow, which was the City Island Art Organization, which was great. I met Ron, and it just became this whole thing. I was designing gardens after, and teaching, writing for the Current. The City Island has been really such a great place for me.
And it took me 4 years before I knew that you weren't from City Island, because you are.
That's right. That's right. I've been there since '93, but I don't live on City Island, no. But I feel like I'm almost a clam digger. Not quite.
Tell us a little bit about your perspective of what you think art is for in life.
Oh, art is for, I think art is for me, it's transformational. It turns suffering into joy. It's for waking myself up. It's for waking others up. It's a meditation to center oneself. It's making poetry out of the banality of life, I think. I don't really like to stick to one style. I like my work to sometimes be ambiguous so that the viewer can make his own interpretation. Or he may see something that strikes him as universal, that talks to him maybe in a voice he can't quite understand because it's a language of the eye and the heart and the soul. I hope that my art and my shop inspires me as other artists have inspired me, because actually I think that great art, great artists have inspired me more than nature itself. So I hope in my small way, by being on the avenue, that I do that. I can return that gift. Maybe.
Choose the painting you'd like to talk about and just give us some information and maybe an insider's view of one of your pieces that are up.
Well, in most of the paintings that I've been showing here are representational. I haven't really shown the ones that I call figurative abstractions, because I thought these would be more in keeping with City Island. But I can talk about the one that is, it's something like a figure on top of a wave. This one, if you could shrink it a little bit.
Can everyone see that?
Yeah, it's not shrinking, but it just, that picture really just started off as being water. And then I turn off. Because I feel I have enough technique. So I just shut down and I turn off. And then that figure emerged just from nowhere. And it just became this beautiful figure, maybe, that's on top of the wave. So it's just something that's unconscious that comes out. It's chance plays a great deal in the way I work. I want to be surprised. I want to surprise myself. I get bored if I don't surprise myself.
Easily bored. I think that might be a criteria for becoming an artist.
That's true, Cheryl.
Okay. And Marguerite,
Yes.
up second. Thank you, Mary. We'll come back to you, Mary. Along
Thank
with
you.
Marguerite.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Tell us a little bit about the painting that you'd like to choose. I can see two of them from here. Choose the one you'd like to tell us about.
Let's see. Let's go through some of them.
That's good.
That go back to this one is really quite old. I did that a very long time ago. Of course, that's now whatever is 239 play, but that's Mrs. Perstein's. And she is Ina Elwanger's mother. And Ina was the principal of PS 175 for years. But that kind of goes back and kind of shows my beginnings, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
And interestingly, it's an oil painting. And really what I've done is I went to Cooper Union School of Art and I studied oil painting there, but my major really was silk screening.
Hmm. And how did you make that transition?
No, I took classes with my most memorable one was with Wolf Kahn in Cooper Union, and who I love so much for his color sense. But interestingly enough, once I graduated, I started teaching myself watercolor. Completely, so different. You work so differently. You work from light to dark. With oil painting, you work from dark to light. So, so my big body of this work you see here is watercolor. So if you move on to some other paintings, you like this one, for example, the Horton's ice cream shop shown earlier at the Nevins Boatyard. These really came from Lauren's father, who is now president of the Nautical Museum, but he has his own personal collection of albums that are mostly black and white Xeroxes, but all historical photographs. And so I would borrow these, these Xeroxes from him and just reimagine everything in color. As an artist will edit them, according to what I thought was a better composition, deleting certain things that were, too confusing to the eye. And so.
And who else besides Nye has been an inspiration to you? I'm sure Mary.
Well, Tom Nye wasn't an inspiration. He was a source. Okay, Mary's nodding. But well, what's so interesting and like Mary, I don't have anything up here that is representative of the work that I'm doing. Oh, there we are. There it is. Okay. Work that I'm doing now, kind of in a way harks back to even high school for me, because I went to the High School of Art and Design, and I studied painting there with Max Ginsburg. But this goes back to an interest in Max Ernst, of all people. And I was very interested in the frottage and decalcomania.
Cool.
And so all of that is kind of, represented in this new series, along with textures that are made through pouring and other manipulation of the paint. So that surprise aspect that Mary was talking about very much comes into play here. But I'm controlling the uncontrollable because what I'm doing is I make these textures as skins that I then peel up. I cure them. I coat them so that, because they stick to each other like mad if you don't. And then I collage with them and then overpaint on top of that. So, so all of these textures, that you can't control what happens. They're just a surprise,
Mhm.
you
And
know.
do you paint them
I-
the first, or are you,
I collage with paint
okay,
and then paint over that.
okay.
So yeah, it's a process.
I
But
can imagine.
yeah, this is a continuing voyage of discovery that I'm just enjoying so much, and such a departure from what I used to do. Yeah.
Oh, tell me a little bit about why you've been on City Island most of your life to do your art, and you were born here.
I was waiting for the question of how did you get to City Island? And I was going to tell you in my mother's womb.
Sir, tell us a little bit about what was the inspiration for staying, and then now that you've branched out a little bit, we still consider you here because you're only a phone call or a text away. So,
Right.
right. Tell us a
So
little.
I think what you're asking me is, why did I get into art in the first place?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's similar to, but very different from Mary's story because my grandfather on my mother's side, who was a painter, a watercolor painter, he did nautical scenes, he did Western scenes, but he passed when I was very, very young. So I never really got to learn anything from him. But my mother, who was not an artist, was a creative person. And in grammar school, she saw what me drawing all the time. And she sat me down one time. This is a very memorable moment. And at whatever age, kids in grammar school, they make an eye by drawing an arch this way and one this way and a circle in the middle. And that's it. Well, my mother sat down and she drew my eye with the cornea and the detail, and she was good at it. And she said, it's more than just this. And so from her, I learned observation at a young age. So that's where it started.
And where did it take you?
Where I am now. Well, I always was interested throughout grammar school, and even though I applied to and got into Bronx Science, I applied to and got into art and design, and that's where my heart was. So that's where I went.
And that makes sense. Tell me a little bit about what art means to you and what art is for.
Those are, tough questions. I never really thought about mostly what I can tell you is that when I'm working on my art, I am totally 100% absorbed in it, to the point that it has gotten me in trouble. watercolor. And I lived on City Island, and my sister-in-law called me because she couldn't get out of work. And she said, could you go pick up Benjamin at school at PS 175? And I'm like, sure. And of course, I had a wash that was drying up that needed attention. But it was in 20 minutes she wanted me to do it. It wasn't right away. So I just dive back in. I'm working. Next thing, there's a knock on my front door, and it's my sister-in-law. And I go, oh, I totally forgot to go pick up pen. She never asked me again.
So it consumes your life.
So it just, no, I just get totally wrapped up. I'm in the zone, and other things don't exist. They just don't.
Well, thank you. And we'll come back to you more in a minute.
Okay.
Discussion. And last but not least, Ron Terner.
Hello.
Hi. Your work in one aspect, just one aspect, because you have so many aspects to your work. When Marguerite was explaining about peeling away the collage and everything, I was thinking you two should get together and do something in the community. Because we have a joke about Ron that if you stand still in his studio, he'll have an image on your back, right?
Yeah, well, the photo transfers, which I've been doing for the last more than 10 years now, the work that we're going to see is more traditional photography. And I selected work of that was done when I first came to City Island, which was traditional photography. And then afterwards, on City Island in the darkroom, I had an accident. And then I started producing photochemical paintings. And then to the point of what I'm doing now, experimenting with photo transfers and transferring the pictures onto whatever surface I can think of. So if you stand still long enough, I'll transfer a picture onto you. So, but what we're looking at now are the early pictures of City Island when I came here, which was in 1974. And, you know, what's interesting is that I know Mary and I know Marguerite really well. I watched Marguerite grow up, and Mary I met a little later through Chow, but I think I knew Mary before. And then we all became very close friends, and we've all worked together as well. There's some parallel stories. I mean, what brought me to City Island was a arts and crafts fair, the very first one that was created by Warren Sonberg. That's Mary's story. That's what she worked for Warren. He was the driving force at that time in the 70s for somewhat of the art scene. And I came to City Island. I was graduating photography school, Germain School of Photography. And I got in the mail that there was this arts and craft fair on City Island put together by the Renaissance Association, which was Warren's, I believe, brainchild. And I came out here to show my work to see if I could be in the show. And the people I met were amazing. I met Ellen LeBeau, I met Warren Sonberg, Mary and Tony Calter. You had a whole art scene going on. And they just opened their arms to me and accepted me. And I became one of the members of that Renaissance Association, and then helped with the Arts and Crafts Fair, which, oh, there's Marguerite. And Marguerite then, she and I took over the Arts and Crafts Fair for a few years and put it together. And so it was an interesting time on City Island in the early 70s. Here's me, for example, living in the back of my store. And who found the store for me but Warren Sonberg? We went looking for a place to open up a gallery because I didn't want to go home after the Arts and Crafts Fair. I wanted City Island to be my home, and I wanted to find a place to open up a gallery, which was a dream of mine. And Warren helped me find this store, 296 City Island Avenue. It was huge. It was like a loft. But the only problem was it didn't have heat or hot water. And I couldn't afford 2 rents. So it meant moving into my store and dealing with not having any heat. So that's how I got the potbelly stove. The copper coils gave me hot water. You could date the picture by the vinyl and my stereo. And that's how I lived for 4 years in the beginning of Focal Point Gallery, living in the back. How did I think about putting a potbelly stove and copper coils? Well, there was a chimney there. And I became very good friends right away with Peter Coyle, Mark Whitcomb, a whole group of people who really accepted me and were there to try to help me. And Peter put the copper coils around. That idea came from a scientist who I worked with at Einstein, Bob Muller, who lived out on City Island, and said, you know, this would give you hot water. So it was a combined effort of City Islanders that helped me get established on City Island. And I saw a magical place. I grew up in the Bronx, like Mary, and coming to City Island, like Mary, it was a mystical place. It was as if time had not touched it, especially if you grew up in the Bronx. You come to City Island, it was truly like coming into a small New England fishing town, especially back then. And I saw or experienced nothing like it. And, you know, being somewhat trained in photography, this was a treasure of photographic opportunities to photograph faces. There's Peter Coyle. I mean, the faces were amazing out here. The old timers. When I came, the boat building industry still existed, but it was on its way down. So I got to see still some of the boat building going on, the old boat yards. The landscape was amazing. You had the waterfront. You had these amazing buildings. At nighttime, I would wander around City Island and see like this was outside the gallery. I mean, it looked like a movie set. It looked like paintings to me that I didn't see in the rest of the Bronx, only on City Island. If you go slowly through the pictures and show some of the people, I mean, when I grew up in the Bronx, I played stickball. You know, I played off the curb, Johnny on the pony. But here on City Island, you swam to a barge and you dove into the water. I mean, when I saw this, and the kids made forts and clubs and went fishing and swimming anytime they wanted to. And I was just fascinated with that. And I enjoyed photographing the activities and photographing the people. I called it hitching. but I was corrected that maybe Marguerite, somebody on City Island said that you guys called it skitching. So,
I always heard of it as hitching.
oh, okay, so that's what I said. And they said, no, 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 this is skitching. And of course, that is Al Kazi waving to me. When I saw this, I did do this in the Bronx. Okay, so this wasn't only on City Island, but you know, people started to get to know me. It was the, oh, there's Ron with his camera. And I saw them going by and I ran and got that shot. This is, go back to that. Okay, this is the bunny hop. And that was my old gallery that they were doing in front of. I was inside the gallery and I saw them figuring out that they were going to do something. They began to position their bikes. I grabbed my camera, ran out, and my timing was good. This is in the day of film and no motor drive, one shot, either you got it or you didn't. What I loved about City Island also, you had the old candy store, which you see in the corner. You had the old dry cleaner, which was next to me, which is now Mary's studio. You had still these old stores and the old mom and pop stores that fascinated me. And since I became one of them, I got to know my neighbors as well. If you go through some of the other pictures, this is interesting because when I came to City Island, I heard about Mofield's lot or Tier Street lot. You had a lot of lots on City Island that you can go and hang out. And the landscape there was really nice. It overlooked the Harlem Yacht Club. And I took my tripod and camera and I went down to photograph that scene with the water and the skyline. And there were these kids. Well, I was in my 20s. They were in their teens. They were all bigger than me, the guys. And I knew I walked into a hornet's nest. They had just finished smoking. You know, you could see some joints on the ground over there. And it was sort of like, they're all clam diggers. And I am this guy who just came to City Island, who they did not know. And it was like, who are you? What do you want? What are you doing here? I was trespassing on their territory. And I had to learn very quickly to take control. I had the camera and they were not used to seeing a tripod and a focusing cloth. And I said, I'm going to take your picture. You sit here, you sit there, you stand there, you stand there. And they go, oh, okay, I will, okay. And I grabbed the picture and that was that. Now I am still friends with all of them and I've seen them all grow up and their kids. But you can interrupt me anytime you want and ask another question, but I can keep on going with the pictures.
And that's okay. One of the things I've noticed is that you spend a lot of time in the park. And, you know, as City Islanders, we always think of the park as ours, don't we?
Well, yeah. I mean, we think all of City Island belongs to us.
Yes, right.
This is Captain George Bianco. He was one of the first people who came into the gallery. And, you know, I opened up a photo studio where I took pictures of people. That's how I was going to try to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
And he came in and he wanted me to take a picture of him. We became very, very good friends. And I have taken a series of pictures of him while he was alive that shows him aging over the years. And I would listen to these people's stories. He survived World War II. He was a Polish captain that would take English transports during the war with gold on it to help pay for the war support. He had fascinating stories, and he worked in a lot of the boatyards on City Island, and he was a compass repair person. He fixed compasses. So I would just sit in my store. These people would come in, I would take pictures of them and listen to their stories, which were fascinating.
Well, thank you, because you have a great story yourself. You've been here, what, 47 years?
47 years now. Came in 1974.
Okay. And Marguerite,
Yes,
are you still there?
I'm still there.
Ron mentioned that, was it you and Ron that started Chow?
We did.
Do you want to tell us a little?
I think a little bit under duress on Ron's part originally.
Yeah, well, it was your idea.
Yes,
You came to me with the
I
idea.
did.
And you ran it by me, and I said, well, let's find out. Let's put an ad in the Island Current and see who shows up.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of people showed up. A lot of people.
they did. And we attracted people artists from off the island too, which was really a wonderful thing. At the time, I mean, I know Ron has probably mostly off-islanders that exhibit at his monthly shows, but back then, there weren't that many people from off the island showing their work here. So yeah, it was a nice thing. It was herding cats for sure.
There may be some people that are watching tonight that don't really know what Chow stood for, and it is CHOW.
Yeah, no, it's City Island Arts Organization, which spells hello in Italian. Ciao. Yeah, so
That was a nice time.
it was. When we started, I searched around and talked to a lot of people that had cooperative galleries, because we needed to have contracts, right, with each of the artists and figure all that out. And so, I took from other organizations, and it was funny because one of the people said to me, yeah, it's a great idea, it's fun, but most places don't make it past the 5-year mark.
Right.
And boy, they were spot on.
Yeah.
Is that how long it lasted, Marguerite? 5
That's
years?
exactly how long it lasted.
5 years. I spoke to, like Marguerite, I did the research, and I spoke to a friend who has the oldest photographic gallery, cooperative gallery in the city called Soho Photo. And I asked him about it, and he said, 5 years, it will last 5 years. How is it that Soho Photo is still in existence? Well, cooperative gallery for them is just a name. For something to last, it has to be one person who's making the decisions, not a group of people.
Right. You're exactly right.
And there's nothing cooperative about a group of artists.
Herding cats.
And then you also did the City Island Crafts Fair too.
No,
Yeah.
it was not crafts, it was arts.
It was art at
Arts
that
and
time.
fine
That was
crafts, and
separate.
we heavily juried it. That is
Right.
why it was good.
Yeah, it was good.
There is no jurying that happens anymore.
Yeah, Marguerite, how many years did we do that together?
Hmm.
It was a while.
I want to say 4.
Yeah, and Marguerite and I both decided simultaneously we had enough.
Yeah. Because, you do something like that and it can be thankless. It's a lot of work, and there was always people who are unhappy. And then part of the thing that neither Ron or I really wanted to do, but we did it, was we would go around. It was in the contracts that everyone got, that, no manufactured stuff. You had to be the creator of whatever was in your booth. It had to match with what you sent photos of. And sure enough, we'd walk around and there would be all these tchotchke things, and we had to ask people to put it away or they were going to be asked to leave. And that was a tough job. And then I forget, I think the last, someone complained about that there wasn't enough foot traffic or something. And, always it would be on a Sunday morning, people are at church. It would always start later in the day. And this
That's
person
still
was,
true today.
yeah, complaining about that. And
Oh, complaining about their spots.
yeah. And so I think that's when we just said, enough.
I would like to come forward. And everyone would be supportive of it, wouldn't you?
I'm sorry, say again?
I said if anyone would like to come forward, that I know you three would be very supportive of someone else starting an art association.
Well, no, that's the person who's doing the arts and crafts fairs is Paul, and I
Oh.
thank him all the time.
Like
Yeah,
how?
we were talking about the arts and crafts fair.
Anything.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, that was this was the arts and crafts fair, Cheryl, that we did. Typically was it the fall, Ron, that we did it, or spring? I
It was
forget.
spring. We did it
spring,
more than
okay.
warm weather. Yep.
Yeah.
And
But
what-
that's what would make it good, was that it was juried and we watched over that.
we also had activities for the kids. I remember
We did.
in a corner, we had a bouncing machine,
Yes.
and music, which they still do with this arts and crafts
Mhm.
fair. But we made sure that there was enough activities for the kids as well with the arts and
Mhm.
crafts fair.
Nice.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work. And at the same time as doing the organizing and doing the work, we would have our own booth that we
Right.
would have to take care of, in addition to
Yes.
take care of the whole
A lot of work.
thing. It was a lot of work.
Well,
Yeah.
we want you for being separately a part of a larger group here. And we feel that this is just one great way to start it off. And thank you for all you've put in it for tonight. When we started this, we were going to have something about Mark Whitcomb, and we still will in the spring when the museum reopens. And we were going over what we were going to present tonight when it was including Mark, and notorious stories came up about Mark. And we couldn't find anything that would rival these stories. And so I thought, well, maybe instead of having each of you tell a story about yourself, maybe you'd like to include something about one another, because I know you have them.
I can say that I worked with Marguerite for 15 years in the decorative painting business. We collaborated in decorative interiors. We were on scaffolds, we did ceilings, and we had so much fun and so many near disasters that Marguerite called it the Legends of the Faux. The name of the
Or
business
fee
was
fi faux pas.
Fee-Fi Faux Pas. We just had so many things happen that was.
Tell the story out front of what was the name of the hotel?
Oh yeah, it was in the city. I don't even want to say what avenue it was on.
Oh, Mary, it's so long ago.
I pulled my tailgate down, and it was one of those buildings with this beautiful canopy coming out with
Doorman.
with the concierge outside with the outfit on, and a whole gallon of, what was it?
Turquoise.
Turquoise paint spilled onto the asphalt, and I said, Marguerite, She said, no, leave it, leave it, leave it, leave it. So we parked the car, we went upstairs and we looked out the window and the tire marks, there were turquoise tire marks all the way down Amsterdam. Oh, I said Amsterdam Avenue. And I was
He was
beside
dying the
myself.
whole day. Oh my
I was
God.
dying, and Marguerite
I said,
said,
"Mary,
"You're gonna wash
it's
away.
one
Don't worry
thing
about it. It'll
here
wash
anymore."
away."
And sure enough, she went
We
by.
had so many things. Like we had so much fun. And Marguerite really, she did such beautiful work. Really, people were always happy. It was another happy customer. Always another happy customer. Thank you, Mark. It was really great.
You're welcome. It was fun.
And the Oyster Project, I wanted to talk about the Oyster Project, which is something that's happening now on City Island that's absolutely amazing. I mean, the people that are involved in this have to be really commended because they're making actual oyster reefs around the island. And I'm painting the oysters because I find them very beautiful. And that's my one contribution is I give them to the organization to auction, but
And
I just think it's an unbelievable project environmentally. It's pretty fabulous.
now that you've shared something about each other, can you gang up on Ron and tell a story about?
Oh. Well, Marguerite and I have worked together a lot of projects. We, was mentioned was the Arts and Crafts Fair, but Marguerite and I've used Marguerite to do the Viewfinders, the Journal of Focal Point Gallery.
Yes.
That was 25 copies of a magazine that Marguerite would help design with me. 3 books that I did through Focal Point Press that you helped design with me.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay.
Just so here's a funny story. I am the world's worst proofreader. Don't ask me to proofread anything. I will typeset, design, 6 days from Sunday. But remember the anniversary?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, the
And
anniversary.
I'm the worst speller.
But at least it
That's a
wasn't.
big combo.
Yeah, there was one of the books was the whatever number and anniversary instead of anniversary. It's like, oh
Yeah.
boy.
And then-
Marguerite also is the art editor of the Island Current. For
Yeah.
how many years are you doing that, Mark?
No, man. I mean, well, I started working with the Island Current when I was maybe 17 or 18, doing little spot illustrations. And
We all contribute.
I don't even remember when I started. And back then, when I started, it was paste ups. You would have to do, paste ups and all of that stuff with
Mhm.
photostats and
Which could be a webinar.
no, oh God, it probably could be.
Yeah. The latest thing that I've done with Mary is that she hates to mat and frame, and I've been trying to teach her. She wants no part of it. So I'm the one who does it, and
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Ron.
spend time together framing up her work and getting it hung in her gallery.
Yes, thank you. It's been a big help, Ron. Thank you.
So we've all worked together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you for being our guinea pig tonight and being, at the forefront of artists on the island. And we'd like to open it up for questions because I know I've seen some come through on my screen. Have you?
Yes. All right.
We're going to say,
Here to help out with some questions. Okay, so we have someone, Aura Morrison, who wants to know if you guys go through phases when you're doing artwork, and sometimes it's prolific and sometimes you feel like you're just not producing anything. So
Yes, absolutely.
maybe a little bit about how you get out of that funk.
Getting out of the funk is only through work. That's the only way to get
Yeah,
out.
and sometimes also time, you just have to let it be because, at least for me, I'm not gonna speak for everybody, but, if I try and force something, to come out of me and I'm not ready for that, it's never good.
I'll go
I,
through, I'll go through a series, and once I finish the series, can cause you to go into a funk. But what I do is I go through a cleanup period. I got to clean up the mess that I made
Yes,
to have completed that series that I was working on for a year or so.
yeah,
And it's a purging process. So I'll clean up my studio,
right.
and somehow that brings me back to, okay, where do I want to go from there?
Clean slate.
Yeah.
yeah,
So-
sometimes that, sense of, yeah, starting fresh and organized is really
Exactly.
something that can kickstart you again. Yeah,
Absolutely. And sometimes you just make crap, you know.
yeah,
And you and out of that
that's the truth.
crap comes good stuff eventually. It's just perseverance.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And for me, fortunately, I have my own gallery, so I can hang my work up and look at it and see what direction I'm going into, and then figure out where I want to go from there. So it's important to not put the work away, but to have it up and look at it,
Always.
see what you're doing.
Yes.
So Ron, we have a question from you on what kind of a camera did you use to take the pictures in 1974, like the kids or the bicycle shot, and then what do you use today in the digital age?
Okay. The kids jumping was done with a 2.25 format camera. I went very quickly from the 35 millimeter negative to a larger format. I graduated to a 2.25, a 2.25, 2 3/4, which was the Pentax 6x7. I shot a lot with a 4x5 and an 8x10. So that's large sheet film, and that's what I would carry around on City Island on a tripod and throughout India, Mexico, Peru, was all large format photography. Now, digitally, which I embraced very quickly when I saw how photography was progressing. I use a Sony mirrorless and a Canon. So those are the two digital cameras that I use. I do not do film anymore, nor do I miss it. I scan my own eggs, but I like that photography is a progressive material and is always changing.
Right. Marguerite, we have one for you on if you're using photos for reference for your watercolor paintings. Still.
Oh, still?
Yeah. Or maybe just generally, because I know you were talking about using them for inspiration with City Island.
Yes, because they were, highly realistic, depicting real scenes, and yeah, I would go around and photograph and use them as my reference material. Hmm. And in general, they're not, none of them are slavish representations of the photography. It's, in my mind, what's the point? Why do I want to paint a painting that's a photograph? you know, when you can take the photograph. Yeah.
And paint so beautifully. Mary, are you the only one who teaches classes?
I think so.
Do you
Right
want
now.
to talk a little bit about that as an artist?
Oh, I had so many talented people come into the shop. I was amazed. It really, and I had quite a few students. I had 2 classes going before COVID. So after COVID is finished, God willing, it'll be soon. I'll have my students back. But I really enjoyed teaching, and the students were wildly creative. They really were. And you know something, my belief really is that everyone can express themselves in a creative way, in some way. Yeah, I do. I think there are a lot of talented people on City Island. Very diverse as the landscape.
I
Uh,
want to mention that all three of you also are involved with the Island Current and always have time to do community things as well. And it really shows. And so we don't want to be remiss in not telling everyone that when you need a gift for someone or a passport picture, or a portrait of someone in your family, that you three are always available.
Thank you.
Ron, it looks like you have a question from David Rosenfeld on if you remember David Rosenfeld, photographer.
Oh, he was a very good friend of mine. That must be his son who's asking the question. Hey, Dave, how you doing? Your father was, I met him very shortly after I came to City Island, and he's one of the first people that I wanted to show in the gallery. I became very good friends, and I learned a lot from him. He was a whole walking history of photography before me, because he was Morris Rosenfeld's oldest son, who I think there were three sons. So I know Stanley was one of the brothers of David. I don't remember the name of the other, but I didn't meet them. I got to know David very, very well. And we had a long, very close friendship. And he would tell me about, well, he had no choice but to become a photographer, because that's what you did. You went into your father's business. And Dave told me what it was like back in his day. Now, Dave, when I met him, was in his, I think he was like 62 or 63 or 64. He had just retired from teaching photography. And I was in my 20s. And so he had to have started photography back when he was a boy, and what photography was like then, you know, and what it is now.
Mhm.
So I love just sitting with him and listening to his stories. And I showed his work many times in the gallery.
That's awesome. I'm sure he appreciates hearing that. Marguerite, we have a question from Joanne asking about who are your favorite artists and painters specifically.
Oh, boy. It's probably a very long list. And boy, where am I gonna? Always, like I said in the beginning, my interest was piqued by Max Ernst, but you know, I didn't really love his work that he made, but I was intrigued by the process. So I have to, I know this is going to sound trite and like everybody says this, but it's true. I love the Impressionists. I mean, I just can't, you know, I can't lie about that.
Okay.
You
You're
know,
beautiful.
and yeah, absolutely. And then there are, I know this is like not in favor, but I do love the English Romantic painters, you know? So, you know, like Waterhouse. Um, and I love Whistler, his nocturnes and some of his, you know, his portraiture. You know, the composition in gray for me is the least interesting. That's the one everybody sees, you know, but I thought his work was beautiful. And he used to say, that if he could not 5 subjects in 5 minutes, he thought he was doing something wrong, you know, not exactly those words, but, you know, he just, everything interested him, you know, which was sort of kind of a springboard for, and in current times, person who has influenced me was Dwayne Kaiser, because he started this movement called A Painting a Day. And I was looking at his work and just how, in that same manner of just looking at everyday objects and turning them into the subject of a painting and making something extraordinary out of the ordinary. And so that's where my painting a day thing started.
I love that series.
Yeah.
That was great.
So, yeah.
All right, so the final question maybe of the evening for each of you. Is it possible to pick your favorite piece or series that you've made at this moment in time?
That's easy. It's behind me, my reef people.
Mm. Yeah, I'd have to say the current work that I'm working on now. But I do like my figurative abstractions the best of my work. I love painting like Manet and doing the oysters and all that. I do love that. It's very quieting to me because you're actually looking at something, so the stress is off. But I guess I enjoy the things that really I have no idea what I'm going to make it all, and they just happen. Those are my favorite things.
I would agree. It's what I'm doing now. It's the photo transfers. It's what's interesting about that was that a good part of my life was spent in the darkroom, and that was hands-on. You know, you would go out, shoot, you would develop your negatives, and you would print. Your hands would be, you'd mix chemicals, your hands would be immersed in what you were doing. And once photography changed to digital and the darkroom wasn't necessary, and you sat behind a computer and worked in Photoshop, that took away somewhat of that hands-on. And when I started doing photo transfers, it brought back that hands-on for me. And I still have my darkroom in the back of the gallery. I still have the sink. I kept one enlarger up. I donated all the equipment to people who wanted it. But the darkroom sink is used for my photo transfers because it is very, very much a hands-on. So it satisfies both parts. You go out, you shoot, you know, you experience, you see the image, you come back, you interpret the image, and then I can have my hands on by peeling it and touching it and putting it onto different surfaces. So it's very tactile, just like photography used to be for me. So it is what I'm doing now. I very much enjoy doing the photo transfers and then finding new things to transfer them onto. The latest were leaves. And I went hunting around for leaves and different types of leaves and seeing what I had to do and experimenting how to make that work so that the leaf wouldn't disintegrate and the leaf would, I could do it so that the image would be vibrant enough on a leaf. And that challenge, I'm always looking for a challenge.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. And we will be having more webinars. As you know, the next one is February 8th with Tom Nye and a history of City Island. And we'd like to say goodnight. And we will probably be putting this up on YouTube so that it can be seen again, like we did the one from Hart Island.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you,
Great
Lauren.
conversation.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Laura.
everyone for sharing your stories, and thank you everyone for coming, and definitely, like Cheryl said, sign up for the next one.
Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Hey.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Great.
Thank you.